Well, thank you so much for your company this morning. Julia is off today. She's back tomorrow, but I am here. There's lots to talk about, including with the Middle East, where we've got Naftali Bennett with us, the former Prime Minister of Israel, in his first ever interview with Talk. Naftali, thank you for joining us this morning. How are you and your family with everything that's going on at the moment?
We're good. Like all Israelis, we're trying to sleep in the shelter. And I've been around thousands of Israelis over the past few days. It's tough times, but Israel is strong. We have a very strong nation, and we're going to persevere. We're going to prevail.
There's a lot going on at the moment, Naftali. The rockets are going backwards and forwards between Iran and Israel. There's also an allegation, anyway, that Donald Trump, the American president, vetoed an Israeli plan to assassinate Iran's Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei in the lead up to the initial attack last week. Now, that hasn't been confirmed. The Prime Minister Netanyahu told Fox News there are so many false reports of conversations that never happened. I'm not going to get into that. If you, as Prime Minister, had had the opportunity to assassinate Ali Khamenei, would you have taken that opportunity?
Well, I'll tell you, our main goal is to prevent Iran from going nuclear. That's what we want to achieve. We're in the business of defending Israel. If Iran were to stop and dismantle its nuclear program and stop producing ballistic missiles and terrorizing the Middle East, there would be peace. We have no issues whatsoever with Iran except their desire to destroy us. So I would focus on that, on dismantling their nuclear program.
But some of the focus, of course, has been taking out, killing, assassinating senior scientists, senior leaders of the intelligence forces and the regime within Iran. Should Ali Khamenei be part of that? Should Israel have targeted him?
That's to be seen, but the reason that we're taking out these terror leaders and nuclear scientists is because these perverse scientists are working on developing nuclear weapons to destroy the Jewish state and, for that matter, the rest of the world, because Iran, that have intercontinental ballistic missiles, plus nuclear warheads. Right now, enough uranium for 10 nuclear warheads is a menace not only for Israel, but for the whole world. And I think Israel's doing the very thankless job of fighting Iran on this. We do expect the world to stand behind us.
You talk about it being thankless, you talk about the world standing behind you. Do you believe the Americans are standing behind Israel at the moment? Because Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, has previously emphasised that Israel acted unilaterally in its initial attacks. And you have the UK, France and others calling for restraint and de-escalation. I just wonder whether you feel you're actually being backed up by the international community, or do they want this all to go away?
Well, the international community has a history of wanting bad things to go away without being willing to do the job to make them go away. Now, if we were dealing with reasonable interlocutors, then, you know, the best approach would be, let's do peace. Let's stop killing each other. But that's not what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a maniacal regime, old, incompetent, corrupt, terrorizing radical regime that is intent on destroying the Jewish state, the small Satan, and the West, which is the big Satan. So we are only the front line in a much broader war, but Israel has been willing to take this on ourselves. We're paying a very heavy price. We have about 25 Israelis that have been killed by these missiles already. It's unpleasant, but someone's got to do the job.
What do you think of Keir Starmer, Sir Keir Starmer, our Prime Minister? He's at the G7 in Canada at the moment. Within the last week, he has authorised the censure of 2 Israeli cabinet members. They're in coalition with Benjamin Netanyahu. We know that perhaps on Tuesday, his ally France, who censured them as well, may recognise a Palestinian state. We know there is pressure within his own party to recognise a Palestinian state. It doesn't seem to me, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, Naftali, but it doesn't seem to me as if you feel you're being backed up by many Western nations, including Sir Keir Starmer here in the UK.
I think the boycott of those 2 ministers by the UK is unacceptable. It's unacceptable because we're a democracy. Israel's a democracy, a liberal democracy, fighting for security and fighting for the security of the world.
They've said some very unpleasant things, have they not?
They have. They've said idiotic, stupid things, and I'm on opposition. I do not think they're wonderful ministers by any stretch of imagination. So what? So what? It's a democracy. In democracy, people, even politicians, have the right to say stupid things, but you don't boycott them for that. You don't boycott them. You don't boycott your own allies, especially when your own allies are fighting for your safety. We've not asked the UK to do anything for us. We've not asked the UK to fight the war, but we're fighting the war. But to go and boycott two of our ministers, even though I think that this government is not a good government, the Israeli government should be replaced, but by elections, not by international boycott, I think it's a shameful act, and I condemn it.
So what is your message to Sir Keir Starmer this morning?
My message is not to Starmer, but it's to the British people. Look, we're fighting a very difficult war against a big network of radical Islam, which, by the way, you can see it also, some of it, on the streets of London. And if, God forbid, all of this war will result in forming a Palestinian state, a huge reward, another terror state in the middle of Israel, that would be the biggest encouragement to every cell in London, Paris, Madrid, every Islamist radical terror cell that violence works. So stand behind Israel. Don't criticize Israel. Definitely don't boycott us. Let us do the job. We're not asking you to help, but please don't get in our way.
There have been protests, some people waving Iranian flags over the weekend at pro-Palestinian protests in London. When you see that, when people in Israel see that on the streets of London, the UK supposedly an ally to Israel, what goes through your mind, Naftali?
Well, I ask those demonstrators, what are you raising the flags for? For people who murder, who hang gays, LGBT in the streets of Tehran? For women who are murdered for not wearing a hijab? Is that what you're supporting? Is that liberal democracy? Is that freedom? Are those your values, for heaven's sake? We're the free country. We're the liberal country fighting against this tyranny. And I simply cannot accept or understand those demonstrators who are simply foolish idiots supporting useful idiots, supporting the worst regimes on earth.
In regard to what is happening in Gaza at the moment, there is a humanitarian crisis there. Israel is putting in far more aid than the international media usually reports. But should the fighting now stop in Gaza, even temporarily, for the focus to be in Iran? Should there be a renewal of talks to get those 53 hostages home?
There are talks right now going on, and I hope we can resolve it and bring in our hostages home. That's the most important thing. And generally in war, it's good to focus as much as possible.
Okay. In terms of the regime change in Iran, do you think that is something that is required? And also, where does this go? Because the spectre of Iraq, of Libya, that really looms large in all of this. What is your impression of what should happen now and where you want this to go? Well,
Israel has not set a goal for regime change in Iran, but regime change, if there were protests and a democratic revolution in Iran, that would be wonderful, because the Iranian regime is not only a danger to the world, it's simply a horrible regime. It's despised by its own people. It's old, disconnected, egotistical. The leaders that just think about themselves and not about their people. Radical regime that's corrupt, and I think it would do good for the world if that regime did not exist, but that's not a goal. That might be an outcome.
If you were Prime Minister of Israel at the moment, would you have launched these attacks in Iran?
Yes.
Straightforward as that? It was the right thing to do?
Yes. You would have done it a decade ago. When I became a Prime Minister, we didn't have the weaponry and the munitions and the infrastructure to launch that, and I ordered that sort of build-up. But back in 2021, so in 2025, we finally did have it, and we could go ahead and do this.
So you ordered the build-up. So this is part of your plan.
It's an ongoing plan. When I came in, we didn't have the necessary requirements to launch anything of this sort. I put in a 6 billion shekel order. It takes a few years to build up the munitions, to create production lines. Now we have it, and now it's been authorized to be done.
How do you assess the position of your political rival, Benjamin Netanyahu? Obviously, you support him in regard to what he's doing in Iran. Obviously, you support him largely when it comes to Gaza. But he is under tremendous domestic political pressure. I just wonder when you think an election might happen, when you think an end to this war might happen. Israel, as you say, is a vibrant democracy. People really disagree on lots of different things. At what stage do you think Netanyahu will face the electorate?
There's elections coming next November, but right now we're in the midst of war.
Do you think they could be postponed?
No. I would say that all Israelis want to remove this looming threat of nuclear Iran. So all Israelis are standing strong, together, united. I've never been prouder to be Israeli.
There is, of course, a human toll in Iran as well. There are people who I will shed absolutely no tears for, who are developing nuclear weapons and want the destruction of the West. But there will, of course, be civilians who have died as well, as there have been in Israel, not just now, but over the last 20 months. How much of a responsibility does Israel have to keep the civilian death toll as low as possible, both in the front of Gaza and in the front of Iran?
100% of the responsibility for civilian deaths in Iran is on the Iranian leadership, because they've been attacking Israel for the past 20 months with hundreds of rockets, missiles, drones, UAVs, you name it, and we're fighting. We only target military targets. We never deliberately hurl rockets into civilians. Iran is doing quite the contrary. It's shooting ballistic missiles directly into population centers in Bat Yam, in Petah Tikva, in Haifa, where my hometown, where my family lives. So it's very different. The entire responsibility lays at the doorstep of Iran.
We've had a message from one of our viewers and listeners here who says, please ask Naftali Bennett what he thinks about the UK letting in many young Islamists to our country. That's Aid in Wales says there. What do you make of that in regard to the threat that is in the UK from Islamic extremism?
That's your business.
Okay. Listen, thank you very much. We wish you well, and please stay safe. I know that just over the last few nights you've been in the shelters, presumably with your families. I know you mentioned that at the start of the interview, but maybe you could just before you go, tell me a little bit about the kind of what it's like at the moment. Are you staying inside? What advice you're getting from the government and so on? It must be very difficult to live day to day.
Yeah, well, it is tough times for the Israelis, but the Israelis are a very strong nation. I call them a nation of lions, where we rose up against this threat. So we sleep on mattresses in the shelter, and it's a bit unpleasant, but it's nothing near what would happen to Israel if we didn't act. So it's sort of a no-brainer. I also have to say that to some extent we take inspiration from London of 1940, which withstood a huge blitz from Nazi Germany and carried on the work. So now it's our turn to carry on the work.
Thank you, Naftali Bennett, former Prime Minister of Israel. Really appreciate you talking to us